Welcome to our school's podcast.
Excuse me. Do you know where the podcast room is? No. Absolutely convinced it was... here it is. It's definitely much smaller than what I remember. And darker. Who's that? I knew you were here. I thought I saw you earlier. Now listen, the principal's coming in today. You have to be in your absolute best behaviour. Yes, Mr. McCoy is coming in today to the podcast, okay? You know that you have to wear your full school uniform. You always have to look respectable and smart. And you're not going to sound stupid. Don't be silly.
At last! Where have you been?
Well, technically, I've been in the podcast room here with R2-D2.
Don't get technical with me.
Sorry, listen, he is panicking because he thinks he's going to look stupid today.
Goodness gracious me.
Every time I mention the boss's name, he freaks out. I don't know what to do.
I see your point, sir.
Now listen, 3PO. The bottom line is we need you to both... What are you doing here? Oh, you want to be on the podcast as well? Well, listen, R2-D2's freaking out because the principal's coming in today. Don't laugh at him, it's not funny. It's not meant to be funny. I need all three of you...
Did you hear that?
What is it?
Over here!
Sounds like... It's Mr. Adley outside. Mr. Adley? Mr. Adley?
Hello, Mr. Long, is that you?
Yeah, Mr. Adley, come on in. Here, what about this in here?
Oh, hello. Look at this place. What's this room all about?
Yeah, this is the wee podcast room.
Very good. And what about the podcast? How's it going?
Going well. Last week we had nearly 800 views and downloads. Fantastic. So yeah, it's going well. What have you been up to today?
Well, she's doing a bit of schoolwork earlier on, and then a wee bit of garden earlier on as well. Watered the garden, planted a few plants, just keeping it tickety-boo.
Keeping it tickety-boo. And now you're here in the podcast.
Yes, I'm here in the podcast room. I'm really excited for what I'm going to hear today.
I'm very keen for our pupils to hear some of the talents that our staff members have. And would you believe that Mr. Adley is...
Go on.
Yeah, Mr. Adley's a really good, what's the word, impersonator?
I'm not that good.
You are. You are. Listen, he does. There are three voices Mr. Adley does really well. One is Morgan Freeman. Let them hear. Say hello. I'm Morgan Freeman. This is brilliant. Brace yourself for this. Hello, I'm Morgan Freeman.
Right, hang on. I need to clear my voice and stuff here. So hang on. Hang on.
Hello, I'm Morgan Freeman.
Unbelievable. That is. Yeah, I mean that. How long? It's uncanny.
You're getting carried away. It's not that good. It's not even the best one.
Well, yes, your Liam Neeson is pretty good. I'm going to pretend to ring you here on the phone. Hold on a wee second. Right, here we go. I'm just typing in your number.
Okay.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money.
I mean, you can't teach that. You can't teach that. Mr. Ali, thanks for stopping into the podcast room. You're going to introduce Jonah McDowell.
Not a problem, Mr. Long. Hopefully everyone downloads the podcast this week and enjoys it just like they did last week. So it's over to McDowell, who's going to introduce what's coming up on this fabulous podcast.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
Thanks, Mr. Adley. Coming up this week on the podcast, the cast of Beauty and the Beast play a game of Call My Bluff with Mrs. Gilbert and Mrs. Carson. The science department battle it out in Riddle Me This. Mr. Long goes head-to-head with the music department in Gargle that tune, whilst Mr. Thompson and Mr. Guy compete in a question of sport. Mr. McCoy dropped into the podcast. The RA department played a game of Guess Who, and Mrs. Walker and Mrs. Wamsley closed the podcast and driveway catchphrase. Thank you.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
Thank you to Mr. Adley, to Jonah, and to the cast of Star Wars there for our introduction to the second Lurgan Junior High School podcast. We hope you enjoyed last week's. We had nearly 800 views on our YouTube channel, which is just beyond what we thought we would get. So we hope you're listening this week. We hope you enjoy it. We've got a packed podcast for you, as Jonah has already told us. Back in November, we had our school production of Beauty and the Beast, and what a fantastic spectacle it was. And we were lucky enough this week to have the cast, some of the main cast of Beauty and the Beast, to start the podcast in a game of Call My Bluff. Enjoy.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
We have Mrs. Gilbert and Mrs. Carson, and we have Chloe Woods, Maya Welsh, Luke Taggart and Judy Savage, all from the play Beauty and the Beast this year, which was a wonderful moment from our school year. Hello, everybody. We're gonna have a quick game of Call My Bluff today. So basically, for anybody that is listening, the story behind this is that Mrs. Carson, Mrs. Gilbert, and myself are all going to tell a story, and it is up to our 4 contestants to decide by asking us a few questions and trying to trip us up who is telling the truth and who is lying. So 2 of us will be telling the truth, and 1 of us will be telling a lie. Here we go. Back in 2012. My dad worked for the BBC, and he asked me that I want to be Pudsey Bear on Children in Need. Got down to the studio in Belfast, got handed the Pudsey the Bear. Does everybody know who I'm talking about with Pudsey? The big
Yellow bear,
yeah, the big yellow bear. Got down to the studio in Belfast, got in, tried on the costume, and the legs of the costume were too short. They didn't go over the boots. So, unfortunately, I couldn't be Pudsey the Bear and had to go and sit in the audience and watch somebody else be Pudsey the Bear.
Oh, that's so
Thank you. I was kind of hoping for a wee awe there, but I got it eventually. Chloe, any questions?
What was your dad's job within, like, BBC?
He is the head of the sound. Well, he was. He's retired now. He was head of sound in the BBC in Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Maya?
So, before you went in on the day that you were supposed to be Pudsey Bear, so did you not have to meet anyone before to make sure you were all right for this job?
That is, yes. So basically I got a text. I don't know whether somebody had called in sick and said they couldn't do it, but Dad phoned me and said, can you get down to the studio straight away? And because they need somebody to fill in for Pudsey the Bear, and I said you would do it. So I got in the car and raced across to Belfast and went inside, and they handed me this costume, and then I tried it on, and obviously it didn't fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's alright.
Yeah. Judy?
What age were you? Because if you were, like, a grown man, then why would you want to be dressed up as a bear on TV? like were you young?
Wow.
Mr. Long?
Wow. So 2012 would be what? 8 years ago? So I was only 12.
You're such a liar.
That's alright then.
Luke?
Did you appreciate your dad putting you up for a role like this, or were you a bit like, oh, why'd you do that to me?
I think initially I was hesitant. I was like, no way, I couldn't do this. And then, but for some reason after I said no, I couldn't do this, I was already in the car on the way over to Belfast. I wasn't annoyed at him, but I was annoyed at myself for being too tall.
Yeah.
All right, over to Mrs. Carson.
Okay. So I want to tell you about a time when I finished my degree at university. I just graduated from Queen's with a degree in drama. And as you know, guys, I've always wanted to work with children. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to do teaching yet. So I decided to take a year out. And for 6 months, I actually went to China. And I enrolled in a company called Dramatic English, which was a company that worked with people from China and English-speaking countries to come across to schools in China to use the form of drama in order to teach Chinese people's English. And I stayed there for 6 months and then came back and applied for my teaching degree, which I eventually got into, and that's how I ended up getting into it with my experience. As you all know, I am a drama /English teacher today, and that's my story.
I love the way you specified /.
English teacher in me.
Okay, Chloe?
When you were in China, did you like stay with someone else, or did you have your own like house out there?
So basically, because I was part of a company, and there were a few of us who went. I first flew over to England. I met up with another couple of people who were travelling over as well, and then we were basically put up in a sort of hotel / hostel in a group, and we travelled with each other every day to the schools. Okay.
Very good. Maya?
So were you teaching at just one school, or was it several different schools around Thailand?
Well, it was China, first of all.
Oh, did you not say Thailand?
You were trying to trip me up for the country. Good job. So we actually, because we were there for 6 months, we ended up in 3 different schools, and we spent 2 months in each school individually. So it was 3 separate schools.
All right, thank you.
Good. Judy?
Are you still in touch with any of the people like you spent your time with there, like the ones that you were in the hotel with?
Yeah. Not all of them, mind you. Although I am in contact with maybe 2 of them, but not overly friendly. Just sort of Facebook, Instagram, a few messages every now and again. But I don't actually, maybe go and see them or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. And look.
Do you think that the pupils actually learned loads from your time teaching them?
Well, as you know, look, I am a fantastic teacher, so
yeah, I
would have to say that I do think that they learned loads. I think, though, that it was great being able to teach them English through the medium of drama, because obviously it was more interesting, it was more fun, it was exciting, and they were all very, very keen to learn. We had a range of different ages, from quite young, maybe 4 or 5 years of age, right through to 18. So it was a very worthwhile experience, and it was all completely different depending on which school we were in. But I do think that they learned quite a lot, and it was a very interesting and worthwhile experience for me as a teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. And finally, Mrs. Gilbert, your story then.
Okay, my story is about when I was a child TV star. A long, long time ago, I was only 5. I decided to audition for and was accepted to take part in a TV programme called Romper Room. It was a TV programme that was full of excitement, dance, drama, fun, games, and I had to also sing by myself. So it had a special song that you had to sing. I had to go in, it was filmed over a week, and we had to bring different dresses in and different clothes in for each day, and I was so excited about going. It was the best time of my life, and it was then aired over a week on ITV, and I think really that was what made me want to be a drama teacher. That little moment of fame when I was 5.
Okay, Chloe?
So how many other kids were like with you, and was it like your mum there too with you, or your dad, or like who came along with you?
Yeah, my mum came too, and then there was about 10 other kids there as well. But yeah, my mum came with me.
Maya?
Where was this filmed? Was it in one specific space? Or
Yes, it was. It was filmed in studios in Belfast, ITV studios. It's actually UTV studios in Belfast, not ITV, but so it went out on UTV. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Very good. Judy?
Why did you hear about it to be able to audition for it?
Oh, because it was on every single night, and Miss Helen had a special mirror at the end of her programme, and she used to go, "Oh, I can see Maya, I can see Chloe, I can see Kirsty," and she never said my name, and I just wanted to be in that TV programme, so at least she knew who I was.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Luke?
Why, if you were given an opportunity like that, would you not want to go on to be a big TV star instead of being a drama teacher?
Well, look, because I love kids so much, of course. But truthfully, look, I was 5, and probably it's very hard to be a very big TV star. And maybe I would have liked to have done that, but sadly, it was not to be.
Right, there are the 3 stories. So now it is up to Chloe, Maya, Jodie and Luke to decide who out of the 3 of us is telling the truth and who is telling a lie. Do you all have in your mind who you think is the person that is lying?
No.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, Chloe, who do you think?
Come back to me, I'm going to need a minute.
Okay, I'll come back. Okay, Jodie, who do you think is lying?
I'm gonna say you, Mr. Lunn.
Right.
I think there would have been more planning.
Yes.
They would have known that you were going to be too tall.
Yeah, it would have been something they should have asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. And Jodie?
Yeah, I agree with Maya. I think Mr. Lunn, you're lying.
Right. Okay, so you think I'm lying as well, that the Pudsey story was false. And Luke?
I think Mrs. Carson's lying.
Ooh.
Right, any reason why, Luke?
Because yours seems quite likely, with your dad working in the BBC, and then this Mrs. Gilbert being able to sing that song has thrown me. So,
good example of point evidence explained there.
He's got a wonderful English teacher.
Is Miss Nelson your English teacher? And Chloe?
I think Miss Gilbert might be lying.
Oh, we've got all three. We've got all three.
It was a TV show that she watched. She could know the theme tune. I think she could very easily elaborate on a story even if it wasn't true.
So, you make a good point.
Right, okay. Would the person that is lying please reveal themselves?
It was Mrs. Carson.
Yes.
Oh,
no.
That means that Luke is our winner today. Round of applause for Luke. So, listen, thank you all so much for taking part today. Chloe, what are your plans for the rest of the day? Work.
Not much, really.
No, just chilling out.
Yeah.
Good. Maya, what about you?
I get so much schoolwork done and just that's the model.
Right answer.
I can just sense the sincerity in that answer as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. And Jodie?
I mean, we're having a barbecue later, so yeah, that's about it.
Lovely. And Luke?
probably some online learning. I'll go on my run, and that'll probably be about it.
Very good. Excellent. Mrs. Carson?
I'll probably get stuck into another good book. I've been reading plenty over the time that we've been stuck inside, which has been a blessing.
Excellent. And Mrs. Gilbert, any more songs or?
Well, maybe not. No, 500 piece of drama work tomorrow, Mr. Lunn.
Oh,
yeah,
dear.
that's going to take a long time, but I think I'll go and garden after that.
Yeah, good plan. Well, listen, you lot, you look after yourselves and stay safe, and we'll hopefully see you all soon.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lunn, thank you. It's been lovely chatting with everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. Bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
There we go. Mrs. Carson was the one telling all the lies. But it was great to get a chat with some of our pupils, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll have more of our pupils on the podcast. Up next, we have the scientific department who decided to pop in and have a game of Riddle Me This, Riddle Me That Science Edition. Very competitive department, but they were more than game for this, and it was very enjoyable and great to see them and speak to them.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
This is very simple. So I'm going to read out 5 riddles, one at a time, obviously, and it's the first one to buzz in with the answer if they think they know what the answer to the riddle is. Now, obviously, we don't have buzzers because we are in different locations. So very, very simply, Mrs. Carson, if you think you know the answer to the riddle, can you shout out the word potassium? Miss Gamble, can you shout out the word sodium? And Mrs. Kennedy, can you shout out the word electrons? Okay, here we go. Here is riddle number 1. What is black when you buy it, red when you use it, and grey when you throw it away?
Potassium.
Oh, Mrs. Carson buzzed in there.
Newspaper.
No, that's incorrect. That passes to Mrs. Kennedy and Miss Gamble.
Grey when you throw away. Electrons.
Electrons, Mrs. Kennedy.
Coal.
What type of coal, Mrs. Kennedy?
Oh, very good. Coal you put in the fire?
Yes, well, I'll accept. I was looking for charcoal, but I'll not be picky. I'll accept. Yes, excellent. Number 2, here we go. I am a Roman god, a planet, and I can measure heat.
Sodium.
Miss Gamble?
Mercury.
Ah, well done, Miss Gamble. Mercury. Here is riddle 3. I am light as a feather, yet even the strongest person can't hold me for 5 minutes. What am I?
Electrons.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Your breath.
Very good, Mrs. Kennedy, very good. Question number 4. A man went round the world in a ship, yet he was always in sight of land. How is this possible?
Potassium.
Mrs. Carson?
Was he in a spaceship?
Oh, Mrs. Carson, well done, well done. So the score is 2 to Mrs. Kennedy, 1 to Miss Gamble, and 1 to Mrs. Carson's. All to play for with the last riddle here. Number 5. What did the angry electron say when it was repelled? I'll give you the first 2 words. Let me...
Repeat that again for me, please.
What did the angry electron say when it was repelled?
Sodium.
Miss Gamble?
Let me atom.
Yes!
Very
good. Let me atom. Very good. Right, that means, well, we have 2 joint winners today. We have Miss Campbell and Mrs. Kennedy. I think, well, Mrs. Carson, should we come up with a scientific question to decide who should win? Can we think?
Please no.
On the spot. What's the correct name for red blood cells?
Electrons, erythrocytes.
Well done.
Oh my goodness. Well done, Mrs. Kennedy. Well done, Mrs. Kennedy. For a bonus point, can you spell it?
Hang on, I'll write it
down. Oh dear. What's the plan for the rest of the day, Mrs. Kennedy?
Well, I've spent this morning doing schoolwork, I have to say, so I don't know, I might lap up a little bit of sunshine. I got burnt yesterday though, so I have to be careful.
Miss Gamble?
I'm actually doing a wee bit of RE marking, Corey 10 boom leaflets, year 8.
Nice.
And then I'm going to go for...
Brilliant, brilliant. And Mrs. Carson?
I've been marking drama posters this morning.
Lovely. Mrs. Gilbert said
so I've been expressing my creative side.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking part and hopefully see you all soon.
Okay, thank you,
Bye.
Mr. Lamb.
Bye.
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 You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
Thanks to all those teachers from the science department that took part in the riddle challenge there. Mrs. Kennedy was the one who walked away with all of the points in the end. Now, up next on the podcast, unfortunately, we can't really play music due to copyright laws, so I thought what better way to get a little bit of music into the podcast than with the music department. So they stopped by to have a game of Gargle That Tune. Now, this was interesting to say the least. Proved to be very difficult, but I hope you enjoy and I hope this gives you a laugh.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
Well, look, as I said, with copyright issues, obviously we can't play any songs on the podcast, unfortunately, for our students, maybe while they're doing a bit of work. So I thought, what better way to bring a bit of music to them than through 2 professionals like yourself. Are you game?
Yep, absolutely. Bring it on.
So Mrs. McCrory, Mrs. Muirhead and I all have a glass of water in front of us, and we've all chosen 3 songs, but none of us know what the songs are. So we're going to gargle the tune, and it's going to be the first person to really guess what the song is. We're all going to work together because we fear that we're not going to know each other's songs. So there's no winner in the end. We're all working as a team. So I'm going to go first, and it's up to Mrs. McCrory and Mrs. Muirhead between them to try and figure out what song I am gargling, right? So here we go. I'm going to take a bit of water.
Never gonna.
Yes.
Never gonna.
Good old Rick Astley.
What is
That's
that?
it. Rick-
Never gonna give you up.
Never gonna give you up. Well done. My goodness.
Woohoo! That was good, Mr. Lamb. Very
That
good.
was yeah. So right, who's up next?
Hey.
Right, Mrs. McCrory. Here we go.
Okay. I can't. Okay.
There's water all over the computer. I do.
That is literally gone all over my computer.
Dance Monkey.
Yes.
Yes. And you
Well done.
And you could get it there, right, Mrs. Muirhead?
I'm at the sink. I'm at my sink just in case.
Sink.
I have no idea. A clue?
Yes, a clue.
There's a Spanish word in it.
Despacito.
No, I don't know that one. You do it again.
Last time.
Oh, Senorita.
Well, that's a hard one to Gargle.
Is it? Oh, yeah, that is. Very,
Tell me about it.
very good.
Very good.
Very good. That was brilliant. I'm actually, my chest sore laughing there. It's the consistency of water. It's very, you have to get it. There must be some sort of...
You can't laugh.
No.
The minute you laugh, you're goose.
You're done. Well, thank you both for popping in, and hopefully I see you both very, very soon.
You too. Hopefully.
Yeah, nice to chat.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
Well, no doubt there that Mrs. McCrory and Mrs. Muirhead were the real winners there with Gargle that tune. They had that down to a T. I struggled immensely with that, but it was great crack nonetheless, and I hope that gave you a little bit of a laugh. Up next on the podcast, we have a question of sport with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Guy. Both men claim to know their knowledge about sport, and I put it to the test as best I could.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
Well, listen, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play commentary really from a sporting event around the last sort of 15 to 20 years. Together, the two of you can try and guess what the clip is, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question from that clip. Now, I don't really know what the winner can take home today. Pride, maybe. Right, here we go. Here is clip number one. I hope you can both hear this okay. Let me know.
Dangerous to me in third, but Mo Farah gritting his teeth now. The arms have got to pump, the knees have got to come up high. He's got to find something extra. He's got to kick hard. Come on, Mo Farah. Gabriel Maskell is coming, but I think he's going to get there. Farah is going to make it too.
Would it possibly be Mo Farah in the London Olympics?
Well done, Mr. Guy. It is indeed. It's Mo Farah in the London 2012 Olympics. So here is the question. That was the clip of Mo Farah winning the 5,000 metre gold medal. Your first question, you don't have to shout it out. Your first question is, in what other track event did Mo Farah win a gold medal in that year?
That'd be the long jump, obviously.
Right, so that is question one. Right, here is clip number two.
Can I just add at this point that Mr. Black Jr.'s times in the 5K are apparently quicker than Mo Farah's at the moment? What? There's a rumour that he's been out in his bicycle.
Here is clip number two. Hope you can hear this, Mr. Thompson. I'll try and put the phone a bit closer, maybe.
Frank de Boer speelt de bal. Heel goed naar Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp neemt de bal aan. Dennis Bergkamp! Dennis Bergkamp! Dennis Bergkamp! Dennis Bergkamp! Dennis Bergkamp! Oh! Frank de Boer speelt de bal naar Dennis Bergkamp. Die neemt de bal feilloos aan. En hij schiet de bal.
Do either of you speak Dutch?
Only the word Bergkamp.
I got Dennis.
All right, you're doing better than me. Yeah.
Right, so we've got that is a clip involving Dennis Bergkamp. Can you venture a guess as to what or when that clip was?
I guess he was playing for Holland in the European Championships.
Close. Playing. So we've narrowed it down to he was playing for Holland in the World Cup. I'll give you a clue. It was France 98.
So Evie's telling me it's the semi-final.
Now here is your question. Against what team did he score that goal?
Oh, I can see the goal. Yeah. You can see the shirt he's wearing, but not too sure about the opposition.
Yeah.
That could be a tough one. We'll have a think about that one.
I'm down to two teams here.
And our last clip, Mr. Thompson, this is for you. And it pains Mr. Guy and I to play this clip.
Hopefully it's Istanbul then.
Well, probably the next best thing. Here we go.
12 minutes to go in normal time. Liverpool 3-0. Corner taken quickly, Origi!
Davey remembers this one very well.
Oh dear.
Big Origi to score.
Yes, and there
well
was...
done, Evie.
Well done, Evie, yes. Who was it that had taken the corner? Question 1 was, in what other competition did Mo Farah win a gold medal? Track competition. Mr. Guy, what did you get for that?
I got the 10k.
No.
Yeah.
Now, is 10,000 metres the same as 10k?
Well, you maybe need to go back to your maths teacher in Walliser, Mr. Lund. But
Yeah.
yes, last time I checked.
It is. Sorry. Yes, well done.
I'd accept that one, definitely.
I was just double checking your. I was right. Mr. Thompson, you had the same.
Yes, we got that one.
So it's 1 apiece. Clip 2 was the France 98 World Cup. Dennis Bergkamp obviously scoring a goal, but against which country did he score, Mr. Guy?
I don't think I've got this correct, but I went for France.
France. Okay, Mr. Thompson.
Well, I hadn't a clue, but Evie's going for Argentina.
That would be correct. Well done.
Brilliant. She's good. I told you she was good.
Yep.
She is good.
And the last question then, that night at Anfield last year against Barcelona, and the question was, who took the corner for Origi to score the fourth goal, was it, I think, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Guy, what did you get for that?
Well, I was kind of given away there anyway, but it was Trent AA.
Trent AA, exactly, that's it. I was Trent Alexander-Arnold. And Mr. Thompson?
Oh yes, agree with that one.
Which would now what was that? What does that make the scores then? That's 2. Is that?
I think it was 3 each, wasn't it?
I had gone for 2-1 there, but
so hold on. The 10,000. You both got
3-2, something like that.
You both got the 10,000.
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson, you got Argentina.
Well, no, I didn't, but Evie did.
Evie did, and
so Evie basically got 3. I got 2. And Mr. Thompson,
I got 1. I got Trent.
Well,
anything to do with Liverpool, I'm an expert on, honestly.
We'll have Evie on again next week to take part against somebody else.
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson, what are your plans for the rest of today?
I'm back to work, I'm afraid, this afternoon.
Oh.
But yeah, we're maybe going around to see Evie's got a friend who's birthday today, so we'll maybe deliver a present and say hello from a distance.
Yeah, very good, very good. And Mr. Guy, what about you?
Yeah, with a wee bit of primary 2 homeschooling here, I'm definitely missing Mrs. Cowan now. The amount of times in the last few days that I've said, now, does Mrs. Cowan lie away with that now, Alfie? Or, can you pick and choose what subjects you do in Mrs. Cowan's class? Or I think the latest one there was, have you ever set a whoopee cushion on Mrs. Cowan's seat in your classroom now? So that's kind of what we're up to now when you're homeschooling a 6-year-old.
Brilliant. Oh, class. Brilliant. Well, both enjoy the rest of your day there. Hopefully out in the sun at some point.
Good man.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Lund. All the best.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
So Evie walked away with all of the points there. I think it's fair to say Mr. Guy finished on 2, Mr. Thompson finished on maybe 1 possibly, but it was great to speak to them over the course of this week and test their sporting knowledge. Up next on the podcast though, we have the RE department. I had managed to spot a member of staff in Tesco's in Lurgan, and they had to try and guess who I had seen by asking me questions of which I could only say yes or no.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
Next on the podcast, we have 2 members of staff from the RE department in school, and they're here to play a game of Teacher Guess Who. On line 1 and line 2, we have Miss Hannah and we have Mrs. Dugan.
Hello, Mr. Lamb.
We've got you online here onto the podcast this week to play a game of Guess Who, because on Monday morning there, I went for my weekly shop to Tesco in Lurgan, and it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I walked round the one-way system and I came round to the yogurt aisle, and up at the end of the aisle I saw a member of staff from Lurgan Junior High School, one of our fellow colleagues, and I'm just basically going to now hand over to you two. You can ask, we want to try and basically guess who I saw. You can ask any questions and I'll answer yes or no, and hopefully we'll be able to whittle it down to who I ended up seeing in Tesco's. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yes, no problem.
So, Miss Hannah, I will let you go first. You can ask the first question. I can only answer yes or no.
Well, I suppose the first question needs to be, was it a man or a woman? Oh, sorry, no. Was this person male?
No.
Oh.
Mrs. Dugan?
Okay, so this is a female person. Does this person ever wear a tracksuit in school?
No. It's a great question.
Does this person wear glasses?
Yes.
Would this person have been a member of the history department?
To my knowledge, no.
Does this person work in one of the school offices?
Nope.
So is this female person a teacher?
Yes.
Okay. We're not doing very well here, Mrs. Duggan.
No, this is good. No, this is good.
She's a woman with glasses and she's a teacher. Right, okay. Let's narrow this down a wee bit. Does this person have dark hair?
No.
This person work in the home economics department?
No.
Does this person work in the English department?
Yes.
Oh, right. Mrs. Duggan, we're on it now.
Would this person be Mrs. Jardine?
It wasn't Mrs. Jardine, no.
Would this person be Miss Nelson?
It was Miss Nelson.
Yay! I tell you, the RE department are rocking this.
That was good. That went from sort of very safe questions at the start, and then it just took off.
Yeah.
Now,
see, Mrs. Duggan and I have worked together for such a long time that we kind of almost think as one, don't we?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Well, Miss Hannah, what are the plans for the rest of today?
Well, this afternoon I am going to finish off some work that I'm getting ready for all the Year 10 RE pupils for next week. They'll be delighted to hear that.
Yeah. Mrs. Duggan, what are your plans for today?
Well, I'm maybe just go back and finish a wee bit of marking here online. I must say the quality of the work is fantastic the children are putting up.
Yeah.
And then I know my middle daughter is going to be making tea. There's been some fantastic dinners made in my house, and she's making salted chili chicken tonight.
Oh.
Very nice. I wish I could come.
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Well, listen, it has been great talking to both of you.
Thank you.
Yes, you too.
You look after yourself.
Yes, you too, and I will see you hopefully very soon.
Good to talk to you.
You too.
Great talking. Lovely to see you both.
Speak to you
Lovely
soon.
hearing you both. Bye.
Bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
There we go. The RA department managing to use their effective questioning to whittle down who I had seen in Tesco's very effectively. Up next on the podcast, we have Mr. McCoy, and I think it's safe to say that Mr. McCoy's first few months, he could never have envisaged as principal of our school what was going to happen in the latter half of this year. But nonetheless, it was great for us to get a moment to chat to him and hear his thoughts on how he is and what he's been up to, and also for him to interact with our pupils and our parents and our staff via the podcast here. Enjoy.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
So last week on the podcast, we had Mrs. Kerr in with us, and she played a game of Would You Rather, and she also had an opportunity to speak to our students and parents through the medium of the podcast here. And this week, we're delighted to say that we've got Mr. McCoy on the line. Mr. McCoy, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Lunn. I'm not too bad at all. I'm enjoying this weather, I have to say, particularly today.
Yep.
I've just been working away just as normal. It's not easy. Even the adults amongst us, I would say I can speak for all teachers when I say that we're all trying our best to adapt to this new way of working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as well as you say that, staff and adults and parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles, everyone's having to adapt to this new approach. And I think I don't know if I have been working. I haven't just been on YouTube, but I suppose another little video that was doing the rounds here recently was this little clip of an American music teacher who decided to write a song. Basically summing up how she felt as a teacher at the minute and how maybe most adults felt. So I'm just going to play it for you.
Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go.
That's just it. So that seems to be her thought process.
Yeah, well, do you know what? In one way, I can see where she's coming from, because it is really, really frustrating, and I'm sure I have to I have to pay a tribute to our pupils because I think our pupils have really, really engaged very well with the online learning. And if by any chance there is someone listening here who hasn't engaged, you can beware because I'm coming after you, each and every one of you. But as I say, I have to pay a tribute to the pupils because I think they are really engaging very, very well with the work. And also to the teachers because our staff are expert teachers and we're so proud of them. And I'm so proud of each and every one of them because they've been going above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to this, and they've been putting so much stuff and so much really useful material to make sure that the pupils are engaging and that they are continuing to learn. You know, in this good weather, Mr. Lunn, it probably would be very tempting to think we've hit the summer holiday, but it's really important that all of the pupils continue to get into a daily routine every day, and that the work continues and that they continue to learn. Because the last thing that I want for any one of them is that they would fall behind or regress in some way. Because that's not what I want for them. They, as they know, because I keep telling them so often, they all matter to me and they all matter to us as teachers. I know that. So I want them to continue to learn and to continue to get better in all of their subjects, But I think, you've mentioned also about parents. It's no doubt that it's difficult for parents as well. And getting that balance, obviously there's a lot of work being put up on Google Classroom, and we want the children to engage as much as they possibly can. But it's also about striking the right balance so that they have enough downtime as well. I was at we had a principals meeting on Thursday morning with all of the principals in the Craigavon area learning community. And one of the things that was mentioned by a principal at that meeting is that, sometimes situations like this really bring the best out in people. And I can say that certainly has been my experience because the level of goodwill that has been extended to the school from parents and from the community, is just phenomenal. And it's something that we'll not forget. And it's something that we really, really appreciate.
Definitely. Mr. McCoy, thank you very much for stopping into the podcast this week.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you so much and have a good week.
You too. And lovely to chat with you.
You too. All the best.
Right, bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
Thank you to Mr. McCoy there for taking time out of his day to share a few words and a few thoughts with us. And I know on behalf of the staff, the pupils and parents alike, we'd like just to say thank you to Mr. McCoy for his leadership through this difficult time. Now, finishing the podcast every week, we aim to do this with Driveway Catchphrase. It was a success last week with Mr. Logan and Mr. Adley. And up this week we had Mrs. Walmsley against Mrs. Walker. And as usual, it didn't disappoint.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast.
And to finish the podcast this week, like we'll hopefully do every single week, it is an episode of Driveway Catchphrase. Last week, Mr. Adley managed to defeat Mr. Logan very narrowly. And this week, we have two new members of staff on Driveway Catchphrase. On line one, we have contestant number one. What is your name and where do you come from?
Good morning. It's Mrs. Walker, all the way from Costa del Bangor.
How are you, Mrs. Walker?
I'm good, thanks. Good. Enjoying the sunshine like everybody, I think. But yeah,
excellent.
Doing okay.
Ready for Driveway Catchphrase?
Yes, I love how you save the best till last.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly. Well, let's see who you're up against. On line two, we've got contestant number two. What is your name and where do you come from?
Hello, this is Mrs. Walmsley, all the way from sunny Portadown.
Are you ready for Driveway Catchphrase, Mrs. Walmsley, as well? Are you up for this?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Right, Mrs. Walker, can I just hear your horn there, just for your buzzer?
Yep.
Oh, yes. Good long blast.
That's good.
Mrs. Walmsley? Oh, a double blast, yes. Actually, that's a good idea. If Mrs. Walmsley, if you get it, you do a two-horn toot.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, that'll really distinguish it for me. Okay, so here we go.
Spice it up a wee bit this week.
Yes. Right, here is catchphrase number one. Mr. Chips is out in the countryside, a bit like yourself, Mrs. Walmsley there, and he is staying with his friend, Mr. T. Wicks. And Mr. T. Wicks has just bought an eco-friendly house. The house is made entirely from a special type of glass that generates its own heat and light. The problem is, Mr. T. Wicks's kids, they're quite boisterous and they're pretty hyper all the time. And one of the games they love to play is they like to throw stones around. Oh, Mrs. Walmsley?
Ooh. I think it might be people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Let's see if you're right. You are indeed right. Well done, Mrs. Walmsley. Well done.
Well, I was just really enjoying that wee story time, Mr. Lon. It was great.
Okay, so it's 1-0 to Mrs. Walmsley. It's all to play for. Here we go. Mr. Chips. Oh no, sorry, I'll go again. It's all to play for. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, all to play for here. This is catchphrase number 2. Mr. Chips has travelled to Brazil to work, and he has travelled to Brazil to teach English to students in Rio de Janeiro. He's been doing it for a while now, and he finds that the students in Brazil are particularly good at picking up the English language. However, one particular phrase and word that they struggle with is the word sorry. They just really can't seem to pick up the word sorry as part of the English language.
Should we be buzzing that?
They manage to get loads of different words. You know, they can pick up the word hello, how are you? But one that they find particularly hard is sorry. It just seems to be a word that they cannot really understand. It almost... Oh, Mrs. Walker?
Just a guess. Sorry seems to be the hardest word.
Yes!
Is that right?
It's right. It's right.
Yeah, I knew he was going to sing Elton John to you there.
Go on.
No. Wouldn't want to show up Mr. Black from last week with his recorder playing.
Oh dear. Right, so that's brilliant. That's one each. So this is the decider.
Ooh, right.
No pressure, no stress.
We'll still be friends after this, won't we? Okay.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Chips is he's just got a job as an estate agent. So he's back from Rio de Janeiro, and he has got an appointment in Lurgan today with a young couple who are looking to rent a house on the Guildford Road. They've a very low budget. Sorry?
Good choice. Good place to live, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Walking distance from school. They've a very low budget. He doesn't have much to show them, but there's one property in particular that just needs a little bit of TLC. It's a little bit dilapidated. And he takes them round the house, and really, though, they're not very impressed. The door's falling off the hinges, the stairs are broken, and they get upstairs to have a look around, and in one of the bedrooms in particular, there is a closet upstairs. And Mr. Chips opens the closet, and in through the darkness, would you believe, in the closet, there's actually a skeleton. And he can't... Oh, Mrs. Walmsley?
Oh, yes, I think so.
Go on.
Is it that everyone has a skeleton in their closet?
Well done, Mrs. Walmsley, well done.
Oh,
brilliant.
You are...
I do think ours were harder this week. I hope everybody agrees, but I was just shouting at the phone last week.
Yes.
But I just found those, when you're in the limelight, it must be harder.
Yes.
You had me a question too, Mr. Lunn. I was trying to make the connection with Brazil and Rio. You had my geography going there.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes. I did deliberately throw that one in there, to be geography related.
Yeah, it just put me off.
Thank you both for closing the podcast this week.
Mr. Lunn, can I say a massive thank you to you too, because everybody's really enjoying this and it has been brilliant and so funny. So thank you very much for all your hard work. It's just fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate everyone being so willing. I think everyone's dreading now seeing my name flash up on their
100%.
Well,
and a big shout out to 9A2. Can I say hello to 9A2 pupils in particular, my form class? Hello everybody, and well done for your hard work, and keep safe.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you both so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.
Okay, bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast.
That's it for the podcast this week. Can I just take a moment to thank everybody that has been involved, and to thank you if you've downloaded the podcast, if you're a pupil, both past or present, if you're a staff member, a family member, a parent, or someone from outside the Lurgan Junior High School community. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to bring 45 minutes or an hour of enjoyment into your day. If you haven't given us a follow on the Instagram, can you head over to @LJHS_podcast and give us a follow? But for now, no matter what you're doing, if you're still working, thank you for doing that. Keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, look after each other. We're one day closer to normality, but for now, I just want to say thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.